I'm sure by now you've heard quite a lot about the dangers of artificial intelligence when it comes to legal research and legal practice in general. And there are certainly dangers if you treat it differently, if you make it a source of guard of legal research or treat it as a solicitor. And the case in New York with the trolley incident on an airline, where the attorney had the unfortunate decision of using ChatGPT to do his legal research for him and included the cases it gave in a whole long reasoned legal argument where the cases, at least with references given, simply didn't exist, and the attorney got into a lot of trouble and he got fined for it. And there's numerous other examples of the dangers of relying on artificial intelligence and ChatGPT. But how do you use it in such a way that you're actually able to use it to succeed, to get things to go right with your legal research? And I've used ChatGPT, the version 4, quite extensively, the paid for version. I've used it sometimes so much that you are only allowed about 25 questions within a 3-hour period, and often I hit that specific amount of questions and you sort of have to wait until you can use it again. So I've used it extensively. I've done hundreds and hundreds of queries using ChatGPT. I've tried it out, I've looked at it, and I've used it as part of legal research out of interest, not in the sense of using it and saying this is what the case is, but as a sort of skeletal sort of first seed of legal research where it is very, very useful. Now, I'm usually considered quite good at legal research. For instance, I might be able to look at a topic and instead of searching and searching for it and taking a long time, I'll generally know which legal book to look in. So if I have my LexisNexis open, I might go and open a specific legal book and go through it until I know the topic where that specific issue is discussed, rather than doing all sorts of word searches to get an answer, so that can be quite fast. But what ChatGPT does is, if you don't have that instant access to a tertiary source, a textbook or the like, or if you want to go straight to not the latest, but sort of the latest in 2021 or so, legal cases, it can sort of take you there. You can ask it, write me a memo on this topic, discuss all of the major cases, and it might be able to do that. Another thing which I actually like doing is I ask it to write an exam on a specific topic. So I ask it to write the questions, and then I ask it to write the answers. And for instance, you can ask it to give me the major cases in something as questions, and then ask it to answer things. And what's very amusing is quite often ChatGPT, when it asks a question, it might ask about something which is in British law, which doesn't apply to Irish law, for instance, if you're dealing with Irish law for it. And in the questions it includes it, but in the answers it says this doesn't apply to Irish law, or there's no such authority in Irish law and so forth, or that something is persuasive and this is where it's included in Irish law. Now, the way you ask ChatGPT to do things is very important as well. I would usually ask it to not make anything up, not make up case references. If it refers to a case, to refer to it by what it knows it to be, and to not add in references when it doesn't have any. So it might, for instance, only know a case as R versus V, because it's in the training data as that, and it doesn't actually have the full reference of that case. Some cases it does have the full references, others it doesn't. I ask it not to make up any facts. I ask it to be 100% accurate. I tell it that I'm using it for an exam or study or for legal purposes and not to make it up. I also ask it to rely on its training data and not to make things up, and that seems to work quite a bit. Something you can also do for fun is to take whatever answer it gives, open up a different window of ChatGPT, a different sort of little segment of it, and then ask it whether or not that's accurate and correct, and it might actually tell you if it's sort of hallucinated, which is the big weakness of artificial intelligence. Like your fellow lawyer, like your intern, it can also hallucinate, it can have false memories, and that false memory is the greatest weakness. Another weakness is it's a bit like a human brain in a lot of ways. It's every word in the dictionary is assigned a number, and there's a whole matrix where all of these different numbers are connected to every other number, every other word. And it does it to great degrees. So it's this massive sort of multidimensional table. And it connects them because really ChatGPT and these AI systems, at least the verbal ones, are really a system of predictive text. And it's put it through a filter about several dozen times for each and every word to come up with a new text, and that filter is absolutely massive. What it also does is it doesn't just do predictive text in general, it does it with certain sort of slants based on how you have actually asked the questions. So that's where asking for accuracy seems to work for some reason, because they don't really know how these sort of AI systems work. They just know that they're trying to mimic how the human brain does things in a sort of system rather than in general. And they don't understand how it works properly, but it does work. And when you're writing a book or when you study literature, you'll come across the idea of soft magic versus hard magic. Soft magic, you sort of do something and it might or might not have an effect. Hard magic, you do a specific act and it's certain to have a specific result. You say a specific thing, specific result. You say the correct word with the correct pronunciation and suddenly something lifts into the air. Soft magic is more, you sort of do something and it might have that result, it might have another result. And ChatGPT and the AI systems are a lot more like that. You have results which are not always what you expected. You might do the same exact system, you might put in the exact same words, and it will do things differently each time. Now, it does have randomness built into the system, but it's also the case of it not having a specific sort of prompt which you can work with always. Now, the useful thing is you can talk to it. You can either rephrase your prompts originally, or you can refer to its previous answers, and you can sort of say things to it, you can correct it, you can ask it for information. And when you're using it for legal research, for instance, you can ask it to find the answers to those things without making anything up, obviously, and based on its training data, which somehow works quite often. But then another thing you should really be doing is selecting the case or the statute or whatever it is, right-clicking on it and doing an ordinary internet search on it and looking at what it says yourself. Now, a shortcut to be able to rule things out might be to actually open it up in Edge, the Microsoft browser, and then use Bing to summarize the case or the page which you're dealing with. And that's a separate sort of check and balance, in that if it's summarizing it in the same way, it's more likely to be something which is useful. And then you can read through the case yourself and make sure that it says what you want it to say in the ways you want it to say, and then use it as your actual legal research. Really, the way that I find ChatGPT works best is to treat it as though it were an intern or as though it were a legal secretary, someone who doesn't quite know the law, but someone who can be very useful in finding the law for you, or someone who can be useful in sort of brainstorming things. It's very good at brainstorming, and it's very useful in those sort of ways, but it's not useful if you treat it like it's a solicitor or make it an idol, a sort of guard. It doesn't have a mind of its own, it's only a tool, and that's very visible the more you use it. It's simply something which is useful. It can be useful to help you to draft, it can be useful to help you to, for instance, you can take a sentence and you can say, add this into the sentence, or you can ask it to rewrite a sentence 50 times in 50 different ways. You can ask it to look at something within a contract and ask what are any possible outcomes of this, and it sometimes says something which you don't expect, and then you think, wait a moment, I should have expected that, or you think, wait a moment, I never would have expected that, but that's actually useful. So there's all sorts of ways you can use it as a tool to expand your horizons and to expand your legal research, but you actually still have to do a lot of legwork, and it's the same legwork you'd have to do if you had a trainee you were working with. For instance, when I was the equivalent of a trainee solicitor, candidate attorney at the beginning of my legal career, I would often be told, draft this, and I'd go back to my principal. In one case, I think I went back to my principal about 5 times with the same documents, And they said, no, it's not right yet, go back and change it again. And each time I changed it until it came back to what they wanted it to be. Now, I didn't get guidance from them. I was just expected to learn how to do it properly. And I think it was some sort of letter or something they wanted me to write in their way of writing. But ChatGPT is a lot like me as the equivalent of a trainee solicitor, a lot like your law student who hasn't been practicing for many years. It's useful, and it's something which can teach you a lot if you treat it as only a tool. And it's something which you really need to get hands-on with. I wouldn't advise too much hands-on with 3.5 because it's a much weaker engine than 4. But it's very useful, and it's only going to be one of many competitors going into the future. And you can't really ignore AI in the legal world. You can be careful to not give it confidential information. You can be careful to use it right, and you can be careful to check everything it gives you. But going into the future, it's going to play a very large role in legal practices, simply because it can do a lot of the work that a secretary otherwise would do.